Hi there, welcome. Welcome to Homekeepers. Hey, grab yourself a cup of tea. This is one program you will want to see in its entirety. By the way, I'm Arthelene Rippy, glad to be with you. The name of the program is Homekeepers, and we try to deal with anything and everything that affects the home. And I've said many times that is anything and everything. And of course, the most important thing be the people in the home. And we have brought you stories of people and situations that you would never dream of unless they just came to you as truth, as they do through this program. But I think I can guarantee you've never heard one like this, ever. And you must stay tuned. I'm not going to give a lot of it away right now because the story is such that I want those people who lived it and are living it to tell you the story. I will tell you that Stephanie and Remington Walls, and this is mother and son, wrote this book called Home Plate, and it's a true story of resilience. If you watch me a lot, you know I read a lot of books. This one brought tears to my eyes. It was an awe and wonder, something I've never heard of in my life, and I would dare say that 90% of the audience has never heard of anything like this. But through it all, that grace of God comes through. I don't want you to miss 1 minute of this. And you will be meeting these wonderful people in just a few minutes. After I joined Stephanie and we're making mashed cauliflower. I was talking before the program, if you think potatoes have too many carbs, boy, it's a lot like cauliflower in this way, that as far as the taste goes, kind of a blank page. You can just dress it up any way you want. It's kind of a bland taste. And this is one way that's going to have cheese in it, and oh, you're going to love it. Before I join her, though, I want one more time offer you Money Making Mom. This is an opportunity for a lot of you who say you'd like to, you know, have another income, another stream of income. And if you want it, you can call 1-800-229-0059. or write to us at Homekeepers, Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida 33758, and we will get it out to you. It's $17. That's a real buy, and it could, you know, it could significantly change your life if you get some ideas in there. I just believe that God's going to surprise you on so many levels. And I know it's true because I'm standing here with Stephanie. We've got two Stephanies in the room today.
We do have two Stephanies in the room. I was the only Stephanie in my whole entire high school. 1,200 kids. Is that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? I've been the only Arthelene anywhere.
Ever, right?
Yes. So, but I was just thinking of all the stories we've had here. We've got one today that I think the Lord is really going to use. So, and this is kind of, you know, they call it mashed, don't they?
Yeah.
Like you mashed potatoes.
Asiago mashed cauliflower. It's just going to be delicious.
It is.
And low carbs, which is what I love.
And I just chop up
so this
parsley.
was the smallest head of cauliflower I think I've ever seen. So
a little baby one.
We'll see how this works out. So get a nice, it says medium, get a nice head of cauliflower. So we cut it up and we boiled it. So now it's nice and soft. So I'm just going to put it, this is so simple, it's ridiculous. You're going to be like, why didn't I do this earlier?
Well, we need plenty of time to talk to these folks.
Most definitely. So this is a nice short recipe. So the cauliflower went in the food processor. I have 4 ounces of softened cream cheese.
But you know, we hear so often they want to lower the carbs.
Yes. Oh yeah, because carbs love me. They stay. They don't go anywhere.
We have an employee here. Her name is Jeanette, that's all we'll say.
2 tablespoons of butter?
Yeah. How much weight has she lost?
115 pounds.
It has been inspirational.
115 pounds. I can't lose 10.
Uh-huh.
And she's lost 115 pounds. She's such an inspiration. Every time I look at her, I'm like, I can do this.
I know
it.
I can. She walks down the hall and we just kind of step aside and
She was standing in the kitchen one day and I was like, who is that? And I'm looking. I was like, oh my gosh. I did not recognize her, especially from the back. And it was Jeanette. She looks amazing.
She looks wonderful.
Yeah.
She just kind of shrank. She didn't.
115
She doesn't look haggard.
No,
but
she looks amazing.
The reason I said that is to say this, that a lot of times when I hear her say carbs, but and she's been very good.
She is so good, so good. And then this is Asiago cheese.
Oh,
so potent and so delicious. So I'm just putting this all in here. Are you guys ready for how difficult this recipe is?
And 100 times I've mentioned.
You want to cut me up some parsley?
Uh-huh.
Thanks.
I did a little bit.
Okay.
How many times have I mentioned that side dish is a lot of times the one they're going to remember?
Yeah, we're just amping it up a little bit. Here, I'll put a little bit of parsley in here for me. There you go. Oh my gosh, this actually looks really good. I didn't know because the cauliflower was so small. That's how simple this is. Now, if you don't have a food processor, get one of those potato masher things and just go to town.
And you could do it with a hand mixer.
Okay,
just a little bit.
Yep. There you go. You try it. I'm gonna try it too.
Oh,
she threw her fork down. That was a throw your fork down good.
I've got a meeting after this. I think I'll take a bowl with me.
That tastes like potatoes.
It does. It does.
That tastes like potatoes.
It is wonderful. So if you want this recipe, it's free. The information is coming up on your screen. You do want it. I promise you. I'm going to fix that for all my grandkids and all that don't like cauliflower. Okay?
That's like magic.
Yeah, and the information is coming up on the screen. There are several ways you can get the recipe. So you choose the way you want. Email's fastest, but you take what you want, and then I want you to meet Remington and Stephanie Walls.
If you would like a copy of today's recipe, you may receive it by contacting us through social media as listed on the screen. When requesting a copy through the mail, be sure to include a self-addressed stamped envelope. Thank you, and please know we always appreciate hearing from our viewers.
I am delighted to introduce to you Stephanie and Remington Walls, mother and son, with an incredible story, and they are the authors. This is co-authoring a program called Home Plate, and it's a true story of resilience, and I've never, ever, ever heard anything like it. Later in the program, a website will come up, and I do think you will want this, and I don't know, Remington, I hear that you are going to speak in a church. Is this going to be your first time?
Speaking? No, ma'am.
Oh, not your first time. Because this young man ought to be out telling his story. So that's why I'm throwing out to leaders and all. Take note of this. Welcome to Homekeepers.
Thank you.
Okay, I want you to tell your story. I've read the book. I could tell it, but I certainly couldn't tell it as good as you will. So I'm going to start with you because you're the one who had the baby, and the baby brought lots of surprises to your home.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it started off when Remington was born. He was really sick, and we just couldn't figure out what was going on with him. And it was just after appointment, trying to figure out why he wasn't able to keep formula down, even though we changed formula. Even breastfeeding, he wasn't able to adapt to. And to speed up the story, basically, he had just about every test that a child could have to find out what was wrong, from CT scans to see if he had brain tumors, to just checking his blood. By the age of 3, we had him scoped, had an endoscopy, and at that point, we were blessed because we had come along a doctor, and he had just been trained on testing for eosinophilic esophagitis.
Okay, you're going to have to say that again. I'm not going to try.
So it's eosinophilic esophagitis. And so Remington was hospitalized. They did a pH probe, and they scoped him, and he came back with a high number of eosinophils in his esophagus. So at the age of 3, that's when he was properly diagnosed. We began removing foods from his diet and seeing an allergist, but his situation kept getting worse. And so by the age of, it was 6 months later that we had him scoped again, 3.5, and we found that the eosinophils had spread now. So it wasn't just concentrated, it was in his upper and his lower. And we became desperate.
And this is something where he couldn't keep anything down.
He wasn't. He was malnourished. And so we had at this point, he was still eating foods as well.
But then it'd come right back up.
It'd come right back up. So it didn't matter if we were dining out at a restaurant or at home. He was always vomiting and just vomiting his food back.
So Remington, this is all you've ever known,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Is a battle with food. I wouldn't try to put my head in your head, but there were so many things that in your book, and it's called Home Plate, things that I would never have thought of, that birthday cakes and Thanksgiving meal.
Right.
You could smell it all, but you couldn't eat any of it.
Right.
Do you remember when you first became conscious of the fact that something's wrong and I'm not like other people?
No, because I was so young. I don't remember a whole lot from it because of my age. I do remember my parents telling me that no, you can't have that, and I also remember smelling the food when my parents would when my dad would grill or my mom would cook something in the kitchen. I'd always walk over and ask to smell it because I couldn't taste it. So that was my way of trying to interact with the food.
I know, it gave me a whole new appreciation for the whole picture of food, you know, the smelling it, seeing it being made, and this was completely foreign to you. And so you live with a feeding tube,
No, ma'am.
correct? You don't?
No.
Okay.
I drink the elemental formula. That's what I've drank since I was 4 years old.
So you have these powdered shakes you carry around?
They look just like juice boxes. It's an 8-ounce juice box, and I drink that. Now I drink it about 20 times a day.
20 times a day.
That's
And
right.
what does it taste like?
It tastes like a little different version of orange juice. It just tastes a little bitter, a little more bitter than orange juice does.
It's like
Did
a
you
milk consistency.
did you have a feeding tube at all?
No, ma'am.
I don't. Okay. I thought I read that somewhere in the book, but must have been reading fast.
If he wasn't able to consume the amount of nutrition that he needed, he would have had to get a feeding tube, because then the feeding tube would pump all night. But because he was able to consume the amount that he needed, he has never had to get a feeding tube. And one of the positives that kept him from getting the feeding tube was he knew that if he did, he wouldn't be able to play baseball, and that was always his passion. So.
Yes, that was the next area I wanted to get into. Was you haven't allowed it to hold you back. So at what point did you start drinking these shakes?
When I was 4.
Okay, and so this is kind of all you've known, and you've participated in everything you wanted to?
Yes, ma'am. Ever since I was a kid, I've been involved in sports, and I've done art. So it doesn't matter what it is. If I set my mind to it, I'll do it.
You brought out also, because until you found out what it was and could deal with it, it played havoc with your family. You have an older son.
Yes.
And as a mother, I think I could understand. You feel pulled. You know, all the attention is going to this child who needs it. And how did you work that out? And even marriages collapse with this kind of thing.
Absolutely, and we do. We talk about all of this in our book.
In the book, yes.
And we have an older son, Dalton, and Remington and Dalton are 5.5 years apart. And Dalton, we call him our box of crayons, because he's just got such a vibrant personality, and we just never know what color we're going to get on a certain day. But for Mike and I, when we first were dealing with Remington, we became a divided family. Mike and I would take turns, as well as Dalton, going into our bedroom and eating our food while one of us stayed out in the family room with Remington, because we didn't know how to handle it. I mean, we get diagnosed. The doctor says he has to be taken off of all foods because it's deteriorating the tissue in his esophagus. And once the esophagus becomes not pliable, then nothing, not even water, can be swallowed. And so you would have to consume everything from a feeding tube. And so on that day one, when we went to Cincinnati Children's Hospital and were diagnosed and he was removed from foods, we were like, oh my goodness, can you help us? You know, no, we just couldn't even find people to help us at that time. And we eventually became affiliated with AppFed, which is a nonprofit organization that helped us, and we became really involved with them. But then there was a point in our life where Mike and I, we were blaming one another. We started seeing it in Dalton. He was starting to feel guilty because here we can all eat, he can't eat. And so we began going to counseling, but some friends of ours at our church at the time invited us to go see Gary Chapman, the author of The 5 Love Languages. And Mike and I went for that quick weekend, and I was terrified. I'd not even want to go and leave Remington with my mom and dad. But we went, and by just a blessing, he opened up and said, I'm going to be in line. If you want to form a line, come and talk to me, and I'll give you 5 minutes. And he gave us 5 minutes, and it was the best piece of advice we ever got from him. And it was, stop making Remington the focus of your family and start getting back to the table again. And he needs to understand that this is his disease, but he has another source of nutrition that's been given to him. And he
So
needs,
you're at the table, right?
Yes, ma'am. I sit at the table every night.
and he'll pass the food when we're all together. And our biggest time when he's home typically is Sundays. I love to have my Sunday meals. But in those first few years, we escaped all of the holidays. We just didn't know how to handle it as a family. So
Well, that was certainly a divine appointment. If you've just joined me, I'm talking to Remington and Stephanie Walls, and mother and son, and the incredible story of this young man. I have to say, Remington, all the way through this book, your attitude shines through. It's a very good attitude.
Thank you.
Was there a turning point where you accepted it? This is my life. I'm going to make the best of it?
Yes, there was. I was about 6 years old, and we were in Cincinnati for another endoscopy. And I was complaining. It was the, why me? Why are we here again? I'm tired of this. I don't want to do it anymore. So she got tired of hearing it. She took me down the lobby. And she said, all right, sit down and tell me what you see. So I said, okay. So I looked around, and I see cancer patients. I see kids walking around with no legs, you know, amputees, kids that are battling, like, life-altering things. And she says, now tell me what they see when they look at you. And I said, they don't see anything. And she's like, right. She said, you have a perfectly healthy source of nutrition for you. She said, when people look at you, they see a perfectly healthy kid. So she said, right now you have a choice to make. She said, you can choose to live your life, or you can choose the disease. And she said, what are you going to choose? And I said, I'm going to choose to live my life.
And you were 6?
he was young.
Well,
He was very
you
young.
grasped some truth there.
And that's kind
age.
of when the switch flipped in me, that I decided that, you know, I'm never going to get a feeding tube, because the doctors have always told me, like, one day you're not going to be able to drink enough. One day, physically, you will not be able to drink enough to support your weight. Or they said, or you just won't won't want to. And I said, no, you got the wrong guy. And because if I got a feeding tube, I wouldn't be able to play baseball. And baseball's been my life since I was 4.
I would have to say that you grasp onto eternal truth at a very young age.
Right.
That's pretty amazing. That's why I think somebody ought to make a movie out of this thing. So after you put the family back together, you know, I can identify with this a little bit. I was just a baby and I had a physical problem. They put me on a diet that, you know, made me scream all the time. I was hungry. And my dad would take me out, you know, while my mother and sister ate, and then, you know, they'd reverse. And I thought about that. And, you know, I grew out of it, and the Lord touched it, never came up again. But I've heard my family talk about that. And it divided the family just like you.
Yes, yes. And there are so many families like ours that we've met along the way, and we've just tried to offer them the encouragement. And we just tell them it's God. God has carried us through every bit of this. And in our weakest moments, there were times when we would just cry out to God and just scream, like, why us? Why are we going through this? And one of those points, it was when all of a sudden I just heard the word hope, and I started reading in the Bible. And hope became our family word. And so we have the word hope all throughout our house. It just is a reminder of God's promises, that he's never going to give us more than we can handle. Because Romans 5:3-4, right? So
the scripture says that his strength is made perfect in our weakness. And I don't know, I think you're kind of a poster board for that.
oh, well, thank you.
So as you go to school and the kids are bringing their lunch and they have cupcakes and potato chips and everything else, and you have your little pack of shakes?
Yes, ma'am. And It's weird, but you know, I've never been bullied because of it. I've never been made fun of because of it. I think just because of the way I've handled it, you know, this is me. You either accept me for who I am, or you don't need to be my friend. So ever since I was little, you know, I came up with the same group of friends from elementary school to high school. So once they found out in elementary school and they understood it then it was good from elementary school all the way through high school.
Well, to me, you're a picture of health, and I don't think you'll ever be overweight. So there's another blessing right there. So you are in college now, right? Oh no, let's go back to high school. You played baseball in high school.
Yes.
Did anybody tell you shouldn't?
No. I don't think anyone told me I shouldn't because I proved that I could before. I've played other sports too. Like I played soccer. But there's so much running in soccer, I lost 10 pounds when I played. And it took me a while to put that back on. And baseball was my passion anyway. My dad played, he introduced the game to me when I was little, and I just fell in love with it. So that's what I knew I wanted to stick with.
Is there an opportunity to play baseball in college?
Yes, there is.
You plan to do that?
Yeah, I do.
Can you tell us what's in the shake? I can hear all these ladies out here overweight. They'd like to have some of those.
It's amino acid based. It has everything I need in it, all the nutrients and proteins I need for my health.
And those 20 of those every day.
20 of them a day.
Is your lunchbox over there?
Yeah.
What's
Do you want him to show you? He's got one. Do you want to see what it looks like?
Yes.
You want to pull one out?
Do you have one with you?
Yeah.
Yes, we brought one with
Okay.
us.
Yeah. Brooke's going to bring it to us. If you want to give it to me, you carry this everywhere you go, right? And I thought maybe it was something you had water to, but it's not.
No.
It's
They come
already
ready to go.
liquefied.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I've seen those before.
Yeah. This is it.
That's it. Okay, this is what, it's nice and cold.
That's what I live off of.
Orange pineapple.
And
Is there a variety of,
Altogether,
flavors?
there's technically 4 flavors. There's an unflavored one, there's a tropical flavored one, there's a grape flavored one, and then there's the orange pineapple flavored one. The flavors are so hard to get used to that I've been drinking that flavor since I was diagnosed. We've tried the other, so it's been the one flavor for 15 years.
So do you remember any of the flavors, you know, before they knew what was wrong with you?
Flavors of food? Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
because
we've
you were
had-
pretty young then.
We've done hundreds of food trials since then to try to see if my body could handle food. So people always ask me that. They say, "Well, do you know what this tastes like?" I'm like, "I've tasted pretty much everything because we've tried it to see if my body can handle
Tried to
it."
see if you could take it.
But it has to be in the natural form.
Right.
So we can't add seasoning. We can't add, the only thing that he can add to a certain food. If he was trying cauliflower, it would just be boiled cauliflower or grilled on the
With salt.
or grilled on the grill, but nothing else added except some salt. So
Well, the whole lesson in this is so from the Lord, and the way you latched on to the truth at such a young age is very surprising to me. As you went through school from first grade on up, you were behaving like every other kid?
I did everything every other kid would do, except my parents explained it perfectly. They said the only thing you can't do is eat, and you have your form of nutrition. So everything else was black and white to me.
And so, like during school, if there were parties or celebrations, especially in the beginning years, my husband and I would take time off from work so that we could be there. And we just asked that the teacher just let us know so we could plan to be there. And I remember there was the very first birthday party that he was exposed to at school after being removed from all foods. And I had taken off that day, and I showed up in class, and they're celebrating with the cupcakes and the candy and the treats. And as they were dishing out the cupcakes, I had looked over to see Remington's face, and I saw anguish. And at that time, as a mom, I'm like, oh my goodness. I could
know.
either check him out of school, which he'll never learn from. He'll learn to escape and run. Or I need to somehow be able to teach him how to cope through this. And so I took his hand and I led him to the bookshelf while the other students were eating their cupcakes. And I asked him to pick out a book. And so at that point, it was just, and that's also spoken of in our book.
Yes, and I noticed that God always gave you kind of an alternate way
Yes,
to keep
indeed.
him involved. We're talking about this book, Home Plate. The website's on the screen. I really urge you to get it, and you can learn a lot, especially about disease that none of us ever heard of. Now, was there a time you addressed a state? Was it a state Congress or?
There was,
Federal.
so currently we were working on legislation both federally as well as in the state. So for 3 years we've been working on the state legislation, which would—
That Florida?
Right, in the state of Florida to mandate elemental formula coverage, because currently there is no insurance coverage for elemental formula. And so for Remington, to feed him for 1 year, it's $26,000 just for elemental formula.
Oh my goodness.
And so, and we're not the only family that needs formula to survive on. So 3 years ago when we were faced with this, we decided it's the avenue that we need to take. And so it just passed a week ago in the state of Florida for legislation. It will cover those who are covered by the state of Florida's insurance. We're still working on the federal part of it, but it was last summer that Remington spoke before a congressional briefing session.
What was that like?
That was probably the most nervous I've ever been speaking, because it was a big deal. Like, you have to realize that, like, this is it. And I was 8.
Yeah, you're trying
and
to
I
get
was-
something important out
I
of
was
it.
18, so I had to, like, really make sure that, like, okay.
Well, that's excellent. You know, I was sitting here thinking I'd much rather my tax dollars would go for something like this than Planned Parenthood. Come on. See how the Lord is using this and creating some compassion. We're almost out of time, but do they have any idea what causes this?
No, they don't. And we're just, you know, it's kind of like we feel like at times we've been the pioneers facing this disease, and but we feel the Lord has blessed us. He's using us as the vessel to help
He
encourage
is.
other people.
Absolutely. This is just a little microcosm of how America can work. Just people like you can help a lot of other people. We are out of time. I hope you got that website, though. And that book, you can see it'd be easy to read through, but I tell you, I read it through tears. And it has so many components as to family dynamics and everything they had to adjust to, but God was there all the way, and their family word is hope. That's a good one. Hey, I hope you'll join me next time, remembering there's no higher calling than that of a homekeeper. God bless you.
If you should miss a Homekeepers program, you can catch up by going to www.ctnonline.com. Click on CTN Programs and then on Homekeepers.